Hello, welcome to our 5th live question and answer session, the first with former RAs as our guest speakers. My name is Kayla Kowalski, and I'm an Assistant Director for Residence Life and Education and UCF Housing, and I oversee our resident assistant recruitment process. RA applications are currently open now for 2021 to 2022, but they close very soon, this Thursday, October 15th at 11:59 p.m. The application and more information are available at ucfereslife.com, and I'll put that link in the comments of this video. If you're watching us live via the UCF Housing Facebook, you're able to comment right here, and we'll select some for our panelists to answer. All right, well, I'm very excited for this panel, so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Konvalenka, our moderator for the evening. Oh, Dr. Konvalenka, I think you're muted. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Oh, yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kayla.
Now I'll reintroduce Dr. Konvalenka.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Kayla, and hello, everyone. My name is Dr. April Konvalenka, and I currently serve as the Executive Director of Housing and Residence Life here at UCF. I am so happy to be with you this evening to serve as the moderator for this amazing event that we have scheduled for you. So this conversation tonight means a lot to me, as I served 2 years as an RA 26 years ago at Western Carolina University in Cullowhee, North Carolina. My experience as a student leader and a resident assistant inspired my career in higher education, and I'm forever grateful for that experience. At first, I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into, but I learned quickly the connections with residents, and the difference that I made in their lives was very rewarding for me. We often hear students ask questions about whether they should apply for the RA position or ask about the skills that they bring to the position. And while these questions are important, it's equally important to know what you will gain from the student leadership position. The RA application information session that you attended shared as an RA, you will grow personally and professionally. Some of you will be wondering what this really means. And tonight, we've brought together 5 incredible panelists who represent a variety of careers. They will share with you how their time as a resident assistant shaped them personally and professionally. We will begin with the evening by asking our panelists to introduce themselves and share what was their most memorable experience as a resident assistant. So let's begin with Michael Okady, who will start us off tonight.
Great, thank you. Can everybody hear me? Good. Well, good evening and welcome, and thank you all for attending. My name is Michael Okady, and presently I'm a partner at an international law firm, Foley & Lardner. I never wanted to be a lawyer growing up, but I was a finance major at UCF and decided to stay and do a 5th year in accounting. And ultimately went to law school and found my way into a business law career. And I hold a variety of leadership positions within my firm. We have over 1,100 attorneys across the country and overseas. But I get to do my work from here in Orlando, which is a great place to live and have a family. I was an RA. I believe the records don't go back this far, so we had to do this from memory. Fall of '94 for 2 years, maybe 2.5 years in the Lake Claire apartments. And back then they were brand new. I think I was the first person in my building, and it opened up in phases, and it was sort of state of the art at the time in terms of being apartments with kitchens and separate bathrooms. It was all the rage, and I assume it still is, but it was pretty cool back then. And my favorite or most memorable RA moment is got to probably be something to do with my personal life and my family life. I had met my wife, my now wife of 23 years at UCF. We were both in student government. Actually, I interviewed her for a job in student government. She didn't get that job. She got a worse one being with me, but she was living in Lake Claire. And unbeknownst to me, she had been a transfer student from Brevard Community College, and she was only on campus for about 1.5 years because as an elementary ed major, she was going back home to do her senior internship. And I happened to be in the Housing Life office kind of on move out day. And she decided to come in and check her mail one more time, just to see if she had any mail. And I happened to be sitting in there, and I said, "All right, see you next fall," or something like that. And she said, "No, I'm not coming back." And I said, "Well, hang on a second." And back then, we didn't have Facebook or LinkedIn or cell phones. You can believe that. And so I got her mail address and I think her home phone number, and the rest is history. So that I have to say that was probably a memorable and impactful event for us. We actually got married down the street from the school, and we had our wedding reception. It was the first event in the banquet hall of the student union, and that was memorable too because I think the wedding was on a Saturday, and on Thursday or Friday before the chairs hadn't come in yet. And so it was going to maybe be a standing wedding, and they had to rent a dance floor from downtown somewhere. So, but we got a good deal. So that's probably my most memorable event, and looking forward to answering other questions throughout the evening, and honored to be able to be on the panel with everybody else here. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jessica Dean. I was a civil engineering major at UCF, and I was an RA in the labor community from 2003 through 2005. I did one stint in one of the hall style buildings. I think it was orange. And my second year, I was in, I think, Sumter, one of the pod style buildings. My job today, I graduated, I went into the civil engineering field. I do transportation engineering, and today I am a professional licensed engineer, program manager, and group leader over our technical staff that do transportation planning, project development, environment studies, and transit work. So, and my staff is spread out over 4 offices across the state of Florida. So always keeps me busy. Probably my most memorable moment, one of my most memorable moments, there's a lot of them to choose from. Well, first off, I had wanted to be a resident assistant, I think, because I was looking for a way to kind of get more involved in campus. And so, kind of looking for my tribe. So, and I got more than I ever expected. One of my earliest memories, training was really, really intense. And during training, they were teaching you how to be, training to be a first responder, how to respond to different situations. You had all of these team building exercises with RAs from other communities and RAs from your own community. You're trying to set up your room, you're trying to set up your floor, you're trying to get ready for school. It's just absolutely chaotic. And if that isn't enough, because we're RAs, we have to have a theme to everything. And of course, we have to be a little bit competitive, right? So I think it was my first year. Our training theme was superheroes, and the labor community got assigned to be the X-Men. And lucky for us, the movie that had recently come out, the X-Men characters wore black uniforms, so that made it really easy. We all dressed in black, and we made little X-Men logos out of duct tape, probably. So I don't remember. Of course, there was a competition, to see who did the best job on their costumes. Obviously, it was us. But lucky for us, the last training thing we did right before the little pep rally and the competition was we had fire extinguisher training. And if you've never deployed a fire extinguisher, what happens is this little plume kind of forms as obviously you're aiming at the base of the fire there. And when you have a whole bunch of people doing a fire extinguisher at the same time, the plume gets rather large, and it's this sticky, yellowy, whitish goop up in the air. Well, we were standing downwind, so this big plume formed, and then the next thing you know, the wind shifted and it blew right over us, and we walked into the costume competition, not in black uniforms, but our black X-Men costumes decked out with kind of this yellowy dusting, if you will. So we had a good laugh about it. It was pretty fun.
That was fun. Hi, my name is Cecilia Scott, and I am the Director of Grant Programs and Older Girl Engagement at Girl Scouts of Citrus, right here downtown Orlando. One of what I do there is I oversee all of the grants that we have in our council. We cover 6 counties, so we are spread out here in the Central Florida area. But one of my favorite RA memories is I loved, I was an RA for 2 years as well, like 2003, 2005, in Libra both times. I loved making the bulletin boards. I thought that part was really fun. I'm so creative. I loved thinking outside of the box and maybe sometimes too far out of the box. So I had to like ask permission, like, hey, is it appropriate to do this and use this? And sometimes I get the CC, can we scope back a little bit? And some like, oh, it's a great idea. But I loved pushing it because the first year I had all girls. The second year I had boys and girls. So I had to figure out ways to interact with both of them and make sure that the bulletin board, which is the first thing they see when they get off the elevator, was intriguing to them. So that would be one of my most fun memories of being an RA.
Well, good evening. My name is Dr. Tyler Fisher, and I'm an associate professor here at UCF, and I'm the director of Latin American Studies as a BA and a minor. I was an RA for 3 years, 2001 to 2003, in Libra as well. So I'm glad that Libra is well represented as a community tonight. And perhaps my most memorable among many memorable RA experiences was at that time we had to put on a monthly recreational program for the students, and it could be anything that was recreational. And I always tried to do something a little bit beyond the typical flag football match. And so one month I decided to have the residents build our own raft on Lake Claire. So we had been diligently collecting plastic bottles, and then we had found a few sod pallets that we hammered together and pushed this monstrosity out into the lake. It could hold about one person, but then we quickly found out that it was far too heavy to ever get out of Lake Claire again. And so somewhere at the bottom of Lake Claire, there's an Orange Hall RA raft, now well waterlogged.
How funny, that's great. Hello, my name is Okady Seymour, and I am the former UCF ambassador. Last year, for about 1.5 years, my husband was the interim president. And I was an RA way back, way back in 1977 to 79 at my college in Massachusetts. So I would say my most memorable experience was actually kind of a serious one. We had a student who was from Iran, and her mother and uncle had to come and live with her in the dorm for a little while because it was during the Iranian Revolution. And that experience, seeing that, it sort of got me out of my little bubble of being, oh, poor me, I have tests, I have papers to write, and reminded me about what was going on in the big world, and how many of the students who lived on my hall had much more going on than I even realized. So it was a very important experience for me, and I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you, everyone. As you can see, this has taken all of us down memory lane. Lots of great stories about our experience as an RA and how it's affected our life. And so we're going to jump right into the first question that we have. As Kayla mentioned earlier, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask the panelists, please submit those, and we'll get to those as soon as we go through a couple of questions to kind of get everybody warmed up. So our first question to the panelists is, RAs gain experience in a variety of areas: conflict mediation, community development, holding others accountable for following the rules, time management, administrative follow-up, and helping skills. Please tell us about how your RA experiences prepared you for your current job/career.
Well, I can answer that because it's happening literally right now. With my job, with Older Girl Engagement, we have awards that girls can receive, and they meet every month, and my committee approves them, or we give them. So that's going on tonight. So what happens is a girl will present, and I think that's been good for my job is of being an RA, because sometimes there's conflict. They don't understand why it's not done just yet. Why aren't we approving it right now? But there's so much work to be done with it. So sometimes we have to mediate the situation. And I think honestly, being an RA and even explaining it to my committee today that, hey, I'm going to be late, you guys are in charge. They were like, oh my gosh, you're an RA. That's amazing. Like, that's why you're so patient with these girls, because they're in high school. And they're like, this is why you're so patient with them right now, is because the girls you're dealing with are right about to go into college. They're juniors and seniors. So this is their last big thing that they do. So yes, there's a lot of pressure. Yes, they're telling us where they're going to college. And I'm looking at, oh, maybe I'll like maneuver you in if you're like, oh, I applied to UCF. And I'm like, yes, winner. So it's like, you have to look at those things. So I think it's really helped me. Becoming an RA has helped me to mediate and look at all situations differently and be patient with them as they're going through that process.
Yeah, this is Mike. I would just say in my career, I deal with lots of clients, hundreds, thousands of clients in all different walks of life, different geographic regions, different stages in life. And within my firm, I have managerial roles where I manage hundreds, in some cases, thousands of people who are all very different than me. And I think learning the ability to relate to people, maybe on their level, as opposed to the way you approach an issue or a problem, is something that I definitely learned as an RA. And there's lots of jobs and roles that you can have where you get to know people and you have to interact with them. But I think when you interact with people where they live, it's very different because home is, your sanctuary, right? You can have a terrible day in class or with a professor or with a friend or somebody who's not a friend, and you want to go home. Home is your sanctuary. And so I think the nature of an RA job is you see people, sometimes when their guard is down or when they're in that private place, which is different than, maybe being a teaching assistant or, I worked in student government. That was different. People came in for money for clubs, but you're dealing sometimes with the really raw core personal issues when you're an RA, and people deal with things differently than each of us do. And so I think learning to relate with people and try to be effective with people and help them in whatever way you can. Sometimes it has to be discipline, right? If somebody's having a party in their dorm or a conflict with roommates, other times it's they need resources or they're homesick or they're having difficulty in some way. And the RA isn't the counselor, but we are oftentimes, or we were the person who knows where the resources are. And so I think that was a skill set that I learned that I've been able to carry through my entire career. And at the time, I didn't know it. I didn't realize I was learning that skill. And I didn't realize it would be useful later in life. I just thought I was getting cheap rent and a paycheck. And I enjoyed carrying that walkie-talkie. It was pretty cool. But in reality, and when I look back at all the stuff that I did in college and grad school, the RA experience is really a formative one. And I think it's that interaction with people that if you have any kind of career or job in the future, can be really, really valuable and also rewarding. Both back then it was, and today it is too, when you can actually be helpful to somebody or have a breakthrough on an issue. And maybe it's because you approached it a little bit differently than you might have addressed it if it was your own issue or problem. So I think that was a really rewarding part of my RA service that has stuck with me ever since.
I think my answer would echo those of my colleagues and really ties into what Mrs. Seymour was saying. I wanted to become an RA first because I knew that I was an introvert by nature. And I really wanted to stretch myself because I knew after university I might not be allowed to be an introvert in a number of careers. At least I would have to stretch myself to have that capacity. So I thought I'd put myself out there to direct a floor full of young men. It was always all boys floors in my case. And I think I would encapsulate it as the richness of imagination that being an RA gave me when engaging with any person, because we might speak a lot about diversity, but to actually live with that sheer spectrum of diversity up close 24/7 gave me a versatility of imagination that I wouldn't have otherwise had. And immediately after being an RA, I went overseas. I was mostly based in England for 15 years, but I also taught at universities in Iraq, in Latin America, and just to have that capacity to imagine what every individual's background might be like even if my imagining is really off base, to have that empathy and perspective, I think gave me, it equipped me with tools that I wouldn't have otherwise had.
Thank you so much, everyone. We like to say that being an RA, you learn so many transferable skills no matter what your career choice is. And so, and as you've all heard from the panelists, that RA experience, whether you are counseling, helping to provide a resource to a student, or learning about the background of all your residents on the floor, it truly, truly is an opportunity to gain skills that you would not get otherwise, and that you can use in a real life experience as you leave UCF. So we're going to move on to the second question. Tell us about a time that you had a significant influence on the life of one of your residents or fellow RA. Please describe the situation, how you helped, the outcome, and how you knew your actions made a difference.
So I've got a good story. My second year, the residents were moving in, and I had noticed one of my residents, it was a young lady named Catherine. She was obviously a very shy person and just seemed to be struggling to make a connection with people. So I think we had to do about 4 programs a month. And then on top of that, being that I was living on campus, there were things I was interested in as well. I made a point of always going and personally inviting her. So, I would go knock on her door to let her know, my program's about to start. If I was going to one of my fellow RA programs, I would go personally invite her to come with me. If I remember one of my favorite comedians, Lewis Black, was part of the homecoming week that year. That was just something I went to personally with my now husband. Invited Catherine to go to that, and she typically did come. I knew I had made a difference in her life when after winter break, so the dorms closed during Christmas break. When the students were coming back, and if I was around, I would usually leave my door open just in case they needed anything. This mom comes and she knocks on my door, and it turns out it's Catherine's mom, and she just starts thanking me, and I'm just like, what in the world did I do? It turns out Catherine was way more shy than I realized. She didn't do anything. She was a complete homebody. I think she had a few years where she was homeschooled, and her parents kept trying to get her to go out and make some friends. When she came up on her senior year in high school, they told her she had no choice. They wanted her to go away to a 4-year university with on-campus housing and have that experience for at least, the deal was a semester. And if she just didn't like it, they would allow her to withdraw and come back home, and they wouldn't make her go back. Somewhere in me, there with me dragging her out everywhere, she did make a couple of friends. And her mom at the end of holiday break sees her packing up her suitcase, and she goes, "Where are you going?" And she goes, "I'm going back to UCF." So she came back. I wish I had kept in touch with her after that, but I like to think that she went on to finish her degree at UCF and is probably doing something really great today. I've taken that experience, into my life and my professional life. It's evolved a little bit today. I still look for, those opportunities to help people connect, find their strengths. So it was definitely, it was a great experience, and it was great to get that confirmation I made a difference.
I think for me, how I made a difference, I think it was more, honestly, a selfish one. It was more like the difference was in me because of when my second year, when I had boys and girls or guys and girls, I didn't know how to take it at first because I was like, great, not, I'm such a girly girl and I like doing frou-frou things. I like glitter. I like pink. Like, that's just me. I was like, I have to relate to the guys now. But it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be because they became more like little brothers that I never had. So the attachment was different. So when one would come, it's kind of like they wanted the mother figure, but not the mother figure. So like me telling them like, you need to clean your room, it was like a cool thing to tell them because I'm not their mother. But I was like, if you want, I had to think of like kiddie things to do. Like I had like a school lunch program, which was like dino chicken nuggets and tater tots and applesauce. And they thought that was the best thing ever. But they liked it. The girls, not so much, but the boys, they were so into it. Like, yeah, we're getting chicken nuggets. They didn't really care that they were dinosaur shaped, and tater tots and applesauce cups. And they got like a high C box. But little things like that, it made a difference. So if I had to have like a football night or like in the middle of the hallway, I think once we played like paper hockey, and they thought it was like the coolest thing ever. So, but it got everyone out of their room, and it got them again to be interested, to say, hey, there's girls on this side, so let's do an etiquette class, and let's all practice together how you're going to be a gentleman, and then how you're going to treat them, and we're going to have tea. And so doing things like that, I think it matured them as more as me too, as well, just to be like, okay, working with boys and girls can work. It's just thinking of how you're going to do it. And what's funny is that that group of guys that really like connected with me, I will never forget. We had a fire drill, and it was late at night. So everyone, of course, has to leave their room. And so as RAs, we're the last ones to go back in. And I go back in and open my door because, again, they're all supposed to be unlocked so we can go check. There's 5 guys sitting on my couch in my room. And they're like, Cece, you're supposed to lock your door. And I was like, it was a fire drill, guys. Like, it was a fire drill. But I thought that was fine because it was funny. I knew they had no harm or anything. But right then and there, I knew there was a connection with them. So I think it's just making that connection that made the difference. And I still, like 3 of them, I still know what they're doing. Like, they follow me on Facebook. I know like one is married, one's out of the country. So it's good to make that connection to see that that's something that can happen.
What I really loved was starting at the beginning of the year with people who didn't know each other and first years who were really nervous, and you could tell they were just like we all felt when we were first year students, and just kind of seeing that grow and develop into, you know, not some friendships, a lot of acquaintanceships. And then at the end of the year, everybody really being really sad that they had to leave each other to go home. I just love seeing that. And I think it is significant because you're helping people feel at home in a place where they're going to maybe determine that they're going to be somebody else or change from how they were in high school. They're going to grow and develop and try on different experiences. But to have that in a community where they could feel, you know, more and more comfortable with each other was just great.
I'd like to remind our teams, I talk a lot about the Starfish Story. So if you're familiar with the Starfish Story, the story talks about a little boy picking up starfish on the ocean as they've been washed up on shore. And he throws them back into the ocean, and a man asks him, "What are you doing?" And he says, I'm throwing that back into the ocean. And the man goes, "Well, you can't simply make a difference to all of these that are washed up on shore." And as he throws it back in, he says they made a difference to that one. And so I'm constantly reminded about our work, and that all of our students and even each other were starfish. And one interaction, one hello, one moment to just stop and to listen can simply make a difference in the life of each other and our students. So thank you for your responses. So we're going to go on to the next question. UCF's campus housing is home to people from many diverse cultural, racial, ethnic, and social backgrounds. What advice do you have for RAs or RA candidates about working with people different from oneself?
This is Mike again. I think that was one of the best parts of the experience. You know, you bring people from all over the state, all over the country, different walks of life, and suddenly you're living in the same building. I would say that in terms of advice, you know, number one, I think I may have got kicked out there for a sec. I don't know if you heard anything. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, I'll just recap real quick. I was just saying that was one of the best parts of, everybody living together in one building. But I think, be respectful, be curious, and, it's an opportunity to learn about other people, other cultures, other backgrounds, and to share about your own. And, for many people, that may be the first opportunity to do that. And that's an experience they can take with them the rest of their lives. So be kind, be respectful, and be curious.
So I'll add on. But today, in my professional career, my company and a lot of my competitors, and I'm sure it goes well beyond outside my industry, there's a lot of focus on identifying and recognizing your unconscious biases. There's also a very big push on doing diversity and inclusion initiatives at companies. And, as I've seen a lot of this stuff roll out, I think back to quite often to my RA experience. I don't know if this was just my area coordinator, gentleman named Shane Cadden, or if this was something all the communities had to do, but Shane had us, I think once a semester, we had to do an out of comfort zone experience. So, and the out of comfort zone experience I did that probably had the biggest impact on me, it doesn't sound like much, but I was starting to meet a lot of vegetarians, which was honestly foreign to me because I am very opposite of vegetarian. And one of my new RA mates was one, and so I started asking a lot of questions. And I decided for my out of comfort zone experience, I was going to be a real serious vegetarian for a week. Like, make sure all my food was special ordered. I wasn't going to do that thing where I took the took the meat off. I learned so much. First off, it's more than just vegetarians. There's vegetarians, pescatarians, vegans. Like, there's a whole bunch of different diets out there. I also learned that not everybody, it's not a just a choice. Some people it's a choice. Some people it's a medical need. Some people they just don't like the texture of that kind of food and just kind of fall into it. Back then, going to a restaurant, I found it was really, really challenging to get my food ordered the way that I wanted it. So I realized, they just had a lot of challenges getting the type of nutrition that they wanted. And I think the first thing I ate after the end of the week was I got a pizza with all the meats you could put on it. But the experience, it taught me, the importance of walking in somebody else's shoes and, never assume that all there is to know about that. And I think about it a lot as these unconscious bias trainings and diversity initiative and inclusion initiatives are rolling out. So I would encourage, my advice would be, if that's not something that you've done, I would definitely encourage you to do that, do an out of comfort zone experience.
I remember that monthly activity, Jessica, and I remember you doing that no meat for some time. That's funny. I think for me, I am a military brat, so diversity inclusion was already like with me. But what I didn't realize is that it really wasn't all with me, because when I moved here to Florida, there's so many different ethnic backgrounds, from Haitian to Dominican to Puerto Rican. So I couldn't just go around and say, oh, you speak Spanish, or oh, you speak this, because it wasn't the case. So I had to learn to diversify the community I was in as well, and just give them the same culture experience that I have and give it to them, and for them to give one to me. So if it was that we need to have a night of food, a taste of different cultures or things like that, or something I had to do to say, oh, this is what I used to eat as a kid. So what is the comparison? I still do that now with my job with some of the Girl Scouts. Like, they'll say, oh, you make macaroni? I was like, yeah. And then they tell me theirs. I'm like, no, that's not for real how you make it. But I have to understand that everyone is different of how they learn how to do things. So that's one way to make sure that the floor was diverse at that time, was just to make sure that everyone knew that everyone is different. So just because we're all Hispanic, we're not all this. And just because we're all from the Caribbean doesn't mean we're all from this one place. So everyone's a melting pot, everyone's where, but we have to be appreciative of where everyone's from and learn something different, and learn fun fact about a person that you didn't know. And that helps to make things better.
And kind of to build on what you all have said, I think being an RA helped me to cultivate my openness and empathy. And I think particularly when things get difficult, if I find myself really disagreeing with someone or not understanding where they're coming from, if I can try to turn to like wonder about it rather than judgment. And then, or instead of shutting down in defense, saying, oh, I don't like that, or that's not me, or whatever, just try to be curious about, oh, I wonder how that person got to this place, or I wonder what my reaction is, why my reaction is so strong to that, and what does that teach me about myself, or I wonder what she is feeling right now. And I think also the flip side of it is, as an RA, you really, you have to also be kind of brave and courageous and stand up for someone if you see something wrong. Like if you experience someone saying or doing something that isn't empathetic or isn't inclusive or hurts another person's sense of self or self-worth, you do have a role as a leader, and it's very important to not let that slide. So it is great training for these areas, and absolutely you use them your whole life.
Wonderful. I couldn't have said it better myself, so thank you, everyone. All right, so our next question. Housing programs around the U.S., UCF included, have experienced lower number of male applicants for the RA position. How will serving as an RA provide males with a competitive advantage in their workplace and in life?
Well, I was interested to hear the statistic because I was unaware of that trend. I think I would probably play up the leadership angle. And, we've mentioned a few anecdotes, life stories that we acquired as an RA, and those go with you, and you can pull them out effectively in job interviews. You can pull them out in teaching, but especially the leadership ability that one can exercise as an RA. I mentioned earlier that by nature I'm an introvert, so perhaps that was more formative for me during those 3 years. And it doesn't have to be ostentatious, browbeating leadership. Just as Mrs. Seymour was commenting, I was recalling being an RA on September 11th, when our very wise area coordinator, Jeff Novak at that time, suggested that we simply leave our RA doors open, and that as much as possible, RAs would sit in the common area just to be visible and just to be available. And I wish I could say that my residents came and talked to me and poured out their emotions. They didn't. That floor of 56 young men chose not to come to me with anything. But I know that the sheer fact of having that openness to them was a way of leading through that very dark time.
I guess another thing I think of as, because I'm somebody who has sons, if there are fewer young men taking on this role, that's all the more reason to take it on, because you're going to want to set yourself apart on your resume when you're interviewing for positions. And so if there's an opening, jump forward, jump in. I know every time I see RA on someone's resume, I immediately think, okay, this is somebody who is willing to take on a lot of responsibility. They care about their community. They can juggle a lot of balls. And it's just it's a sort of a seal of approval when I see that on a resume, because you know that this is a responsible leader who has some really good skills that are going to translate. So I'd say go for it.
I agree with that. When I see it on a resume, all the same things that Katie just said. I mean, I know everything that it entails, and I think it absolutely is a stamp of approval. And was unaware of the statistic as well. And I'm sort of say if you
All right, so I'll jump in real quick. So again, I work in the engineering field. Some of our projects at my company are like the I4 Ultimate design project that's underway. I actually am a program manager over the Sunrail GEC program. We have lots of other different ones. We're involved with projects out at the Flores Turnpike headquarters. I actually, one of the other hats I wear, I'm a hiring manager. And when I'm hiring, so I think about, the group we're talking to tonight, you all will be, starting your career soon. And so I will tell you, if you were to come sit in front of me, I know you are not going to know how to do what we do. You will learn that with us. And so I'm really looking for those transferable skills. And you will be able to answer any question I lob at you if you've been an RA. Some of the questions, I ask are, tell me about a time where you had a particular, maybe a group assignment and a particular challenge that you were struggling as a team to overcome. What did you do to overcome that? And I'm not looking necessarily for, somebody who, a lot of the young men who come and interview with me, they immediately gravitate where I was the leader and I came up with the plan and I executed the plan. I'm not necessarily looking for that. I want to also find those people who are willing to, fall back and do the execution, because I need that on my team. I'll ask you questions about, how did you do some conflict resolution? Because you're going to run into, project team partners that you don't get along with. I have people I do not like personally, but I respect professionally. So, being an RA really gives you a lot of those transferable skills. And I don't think there's any question, if you were sitting in front of me, that I could lob at you that you wouldn't be able to relate back to an experience from being an RA. So I would strongly encourage, if you have the opportunity, go for it.
Thank you, everyone. During your time as an RA, what did you learn about being a part of a team?
So I'll start, because I was thinking about this one. Probably one of the best skills I learned. Again, we went through really intense training. We did a lot of things together. And I think over time, we just naturally started to see each other's strengths. And when we had to do things, tackle things as a team, we just kind of naturally, we saw the need, we filled the need. There were some times, I might have been the leader for the assignment. Other times I was the one, punching out letters and gluing them to the board. You just kind of fill in wherever you need to. And we just kind of did that naturally. Now in my career, we work on some of these big studies, and it's the same thing. Sometimes I'm having to be the leader. Sometimes I'm being the cheerleader in the background, telling everybody they're doing a great job. Other times I'm calling the newspaper, making sure, our ad is getting posted. So the same kind of thing. That's probably the biggest thing I learned from working on a team as an RA.
I think you also learn,
Sometimes-
like Jessica was, oh, go ahead, Katie. Go ahead. Oh, okay. Sometimes I think that you learn, just like Jessica was saying, that you learn the teamwork, you learn the strengths of others, but you also learn the friendship that you gain from that as well. So it could be something like, hey, I happen to have joined a sorority as well, but there were times where things double booked, and I was part of an after school club. I work with after school programs, so I was part of something that was also one of the clubs at UCF or things like that. So maybe my time management wasn't so great at the time, or I just had too many things. So I could go to my fellow RA and say, hey, this is really important to me, or I really have this. Do you mind switching with me? Do you mind doing that? But you only can do that once you really maneuver and understand your team to say that, hey, I will take your time if you can take this one. Can we do this together? So I think it's all about the communication too that you get with your team and working on teamwork. So I'm very, very big on communication. I feel like if you communicate well with anybody, it makes a good team. Like if you can't do that, you can't. If you can, just say you can, and we can work together and make it work. So I think that's something that's important.
Yeah, that's great. I also want to admit that I remember times when I thought I had the right angle on an issue, maybe a problem, and I really needed to hear from other people on my team. There were other ways of looking at things, and that was super good learning for me. I will tell you humbly. So, there's so many different perspectives that you have to consider when you're figuring out something, particularly if there's an issue or a problem. And that was very good learning for me.
I would echo what Cece said in terms of kind of having each other's backs. I mean, we all had busy schedules, whether it was an exam or another extracurricular activity. And, we would do call one night a week and on certain weekends. And if that weekend happened to be something that you needed to do, being able to trade shifts and things like that. And it's not like in other jobs where you just trade a shift, and because it's overnight, it's weekends. Sometimes it's unpopular weekends, like a holiday weekend. When I look back on it, though, some of my favorite times were when I was serving during a holiday break or a semester break. And, maybe we still need to be there, but campus was pretty empty. Maybe there's a couple students who are in the building because they live overseas or they don't have anywhere to go. And that's where I really created a lot of really meaningful relationships, because it was like we had the whole campus to ourselves. And something I thought I wouldn't really enjoy, I ended up actually enjoying a lot, because you're able to create some more meaningful, I think, relationships one-on-one in those downtimes. I don't know if anybody else experienced that, but I remember those times sort of fondly, ironically, because it was when campus was kind of quiet.
I guess I had an early lesson in teamwork and a bit of what Cecilia was talking about, the give and take. But I had a very exaggerated view of the experience of the older RAs and a very diminished perspective on the lack of experience of the incoming RAs. As I went through my 3 years as an RA, I had to learn that the give and take required a more balanced perspective on the differing levels of experience.
Great, thank you, everyone. So we're going to move to the next question. I think it'll be our last question for the evening. As we prepare to close our time together, what quick or short advice would you have for an RA or a student considering the RA position?
I would say just be yourself, and really, if it's something that you want to try and something that you think you can do, you should do it. It does bring a lot of leadership experience. You do meet new people, you make new friends, so you make good networking. So I still keep in contact with certain RAs that I just happen to pop up and I see. But it's a good reminder of what you still can do, and it's good a job experience, honestly. So just be yourself and try.
Yeah, I would say do it. If you're thinking about it, I can't think of other stuff I did on campus that was as rewarding or more rewarding. And I think there were times where it just felt like a job. But when I look back from now on that experience, I think all the things we do, in college shape who we are and who we become. But I think this one really has a really remarkable impact and meaningful impact, and can carry you and help you in relationships in the workplace and outside, I think really for the rest of your life. So if you're thinking about it, it's pretty simple. Just do it.
I agree with you, Trustee Michael. I love this quote. It's tell me who you walk with and I'll tell you who you are. And that can be dissected a bunch of different ways, but personally, I'd like to take it as a challenge to walk with as many people, as broad a group as possible, and while still trying to be myself. And I think this job can help you do that. It can really broaden your perspective. It absolutely will really broaden your perspective. It'll really broaden your college experience. It'll broaden your sort of peeps at UCF. And your home at UCF will be enlarged and enriched. I really urge you to think about it.
I'll just jump on the heels of Mrs. Seymour's comment there about the enrichment of the experience. I would boil it down to make it yours. in large part, the RA experience makes UCF yours in a way that it wouldn't otherwise be. We're at a university that just over 18% of the student body live in on-campus or affiliated housing, and being an RA is a way to continue this evolution of our university to being more community-focused, more centered on the activities that go on in a university, both co-curricular and extracurricular. I think I never felt more of a sense of place and ownership as I did working as an RA at UCF. There was just a luxury in being able to go on rounds with the radio at one moment and then run over to the library at 1 a.m. Just before they close for a book for an assignment. It just felt like the place was yours.
I'm the same as everybody else. Just do it. If you're thinking about it, there's obviously a little part of you that's curious about what it's like to be an RA. There's not one kind of RA, there's all different majors, all different walks of life. Everybody I've worked with, I've seen a lot of folks, go on to be very successful after college. You'll be surrounded by, positive peer pressure and positive reinforcement. You'll be connected with this group, probably potentially for the rest of your life, in some way or another. I'll tell you the same thing I tell my staff. What would you do if you weren't afraid? If you took away all the reasons you're telling yourself why you might not be a great candidate, if all of that was gone, would you apply? And I bet the answer would be yes.
Absolutely. Just a thought, and thank you, Ms. Seymour, for recognizing me as a trustee. When I stepped foot on campus 28 years ago as a 17-year-old, idiot who didn't know what he was doing, I never thought I was going to be a trustee for the university. And I was appointed to that position starting back in January, and I got to vote on our new president and some pretty exciting things like that. I did want to take a moment and just recognize our housing and student life staff. This has got to be a challenging time to be in these roles with COVID and dealing with everything that entails. And we're all dealing with it in our personal lives, in our professional lives. But in terms of frontline workers, I think RAs and our current RAs, if there's any of them on, and all the other housing and student life staff, thank you for everything that you're doing in terms of supporting the university community and the on-campus housing and affiliated housing community. Thank you for everything that you're doing and for your service.
Thank you, Trustee Okady. We really appreciate that. And thank you to everyone who's answered. I will certainly
April, I think you're muted again.
Sorry, thank you. I do that every single time. The joys of doing things virtual. What I was saying is thank you, Trustee Okady, for those words and the appreciation for all the hard work. As you know, as you've heard tonight, being an RA has certainly changed all of our lives. And once you're an RA, you become part of a family. And so no matter if you're an RA here at UCF or you come across someone who's been an RA in North Carolina or somewhere else across the country, once you're an RA and you meet another person who's served as an RA, you're a part of a family. We get it. We know the experiences that we have encountered. We know the impacts that that experience has made on our life and the transferable skills that we've been able to utilize in our careers. And so we certainly encourage you to consider if you haven't turned in that application. So we've reached the end of our time with you today. Thank you all for sharing your experiences and advice with our current and prospective RAs. You all demonstrate the incredible formative impact this position has had on you individually and as a whole. And so we thank you so much for serving on this panel. And we thank all of you for joining us today to listen in on our panelists today. Kayla?
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Konvalenka. And thank you so much to all of our panelists. As a former RA myself, I completely agree with all that was shared, and I do feel like there's like this RA family, right, that we're all kind of a part of. And for our viewers, right, when we started, we were all like, oh, hey, like this is exciting. Where were you at RA? And kind of sharing stories. Some work together, but some of us worked at different times, different places. So, during the RA information sessions, I always tell candidates, you don't know what it's like to be an RA until you've been an RA. And you really do bond during fire drills and late night incident reports and bulletin board making. As someone who is not creative, that was always a struggle. So you really do create this neat experience. To our viewers, if your question was not answered live, please know we'll continue to monitor the comments and we'll answer as soon as we can. If you're watching this later and you have questions about the RA application, please email us at reslifeselection@ucf.edu. I'll put that email up here real quick. So reslifeselection@ucf.edu. Myself and my committee monitor that and we'll be happy to answer any questions. I do want to remind you that the RA application closes this Thursday. So Thursday, October 15th at 11:59 p.m. Again, it's available at ucf.ereslife.edu. So I put that little banner up earlier. If you are even considering it just a little bit, submit that application by this Thursday for the 2021-2022 year. Again, it's due October 15th at 11:59. And I want to thank again our panelists and Dr. Kambalinka. You can find this video later on our UCF Housing, our Facebook, as well as our Instagram TV and our YouTube. So thank you all for watching and go Knights.